name is Rachel. Welcome back to the Chamber of Spoilers. So, I'm Jewish, if you didn't already know. This channel kind of covers a couple different things, but we're talking about Judaism today, specifically the show My Unorthodox Life. And oh my god, I heard so much about it when the trailer came out. I heard so much about it. Jewish Twitter read this thing to filth before it even came out, and frankly, I get it. Now, if you're not Jewish or you're not familiar with how Orthodox Jews are depicted in media, you might not understand the instant rage. So here's the thing. Orthodox Jews are almost uniformly portrayed in media as basically backwards fundamentalists, and that is soundly untrue, but I'll get to that. First, I want to talk about my personal experience with Orthodoxy. I was not raised Orthodox. I am not now, nor have I ever been an Orthodox Jew. However, I did for a period of time go to an Orthodox Jewish day school, and I had a great experience. It was kind of different for me because I wasn't raised in an Orthodox home, and I also left the school at a relatively young age. I attended an Orthodox Jewish day school from the ages of 5 to 9, so I had a pretty decent foundation in it, and then I attended a more modern Orthodox, conservative school after that, and then a Reform school. So I have a kind of well-rounded education in a lot of the ways at least American Jews practice. So my experience in the Orthodox Jewish community was almost entirely positive. They welcomed me with open arms. They wouldn't eat from my mom's kitchen, which is understandable because they didn't know that we kept to a level of kosher that they were comfortable with. They didn't come stay at my house, partially because I lived really far away, but they invited me into their homes for Shabbat. They had me over for play dates. They made sure to include me. And you know how when you're in 3rd grade, everybody's mom makes sure that every kid is invited to everybody's parties? Clickiness is not tolerated in Orthodox Jewish communities, at least the ones that I was a part of. And this mattered a lot, not just because I was a weird kid, and I always was, but because my brother has a disability. And so in a lot of communities, people with disabilities are shunned to the side. Even in religious Christian communities, disabled people can be treated as second-class citizens, but not at the Orthodox school we attended. My brother was befriended and considered a part of the group and consistently included, even by boys who he had nothing in common with. And that was very special. It's not an experience that we've had before or since. There's a real expectation of Orthodox children to not be bullies and to treat each other kindly. And frankly, that's the only school where I wasn't bullied in my entire academic career. But my perspective of the Orthodox community is that of a child. I was never an adult in that community. And I actually stayed in touch with a lot of my friends from the more religious school even after I left, and I went to some of their bat mitzvahs. And while they were sex-segregated spaces, I always felt welcome. So while there can definitely be aspects of every religious community that are bad, I've never had bad experiences with Orthodoxy. I've definitely had people look down on me for not practicing the way they practice, but that's pretty universal amongst a lot of people. But honestly, no matter how practicing a Jewish person is, whenever they meet me and recognize that I'm Jewish, they're always excited to see me. Now, any Orthodox Jew looking at me would be able to tell that I'm not one. For starters, just the way I dress. So I'm not trying to speak for the Orthodox community or for Orthodox women or even for all Jewish women. I'm just speaking for me. But don't watch My Unorthodox Life. It's not gonna be good. And here are a couple of reasons. So a lot of media, portrays primarily women leaving supposedly very repressive Orthodox Jewish families. Here's the thing. The reason that we're exhausted by this is because almost all representation of Jews on TV that is of religious observant Jews is negative. I wouldn't be angry if there were a dozen normal Jewish family shows and then My Unorthodox Life. The problem is there's My Unorthodox Life, and there's 5 other shows that are just all about, women leaving Orthodoxy and being able to show their hair. It kind of reminds me with the obsession of women on TV having their hijabs removed against their will or by accident. Oh, we have to see her hair to show that she had, I don't know why this happens so much. There's that one TV show, that one doctor show, where the woman takes off her hijab to use it to bind a wound. And there's another firefighter show where it comes off and she is revealed and they all protect her. And it's women's modesty is their business. Modesty is a choice. Leave them alone. It is part of this American imperialism too, to assume that if a woman, and I'm going to talk mostly about women in this case, and the modesty we're talking about comes from a very gender binary place, so brace yourself. But there's this really American imperialist idea that if women are choosing to be modest, it's because they're being oppressed. So of course, women who wear a hijab must be doing so because they're being forced to. Orthodox women also must be forced to cover their hair, to wear long skirts, to cover their shoulders. It must be forced because it's other. You'd never see, for example, someone saying,
"That Christian woman is wearing a hat to a church. She is oppressed."
she's covering her head because that's what you do in church. I think. I've never been to church. Is that what you do in church? But because orthodoxy is outside of the norm, really the only acceptable Jew in media is someone who's completely disconnected from their Judaism. Like somebody who doesn't practice in any way or only mentions it as like a one-off joke. Like the acceptable Jew is the one that is not Jewish. Judaism doesn't shape their life. It doesn't change their behaviors. It doesn't code any way they act. In order to be an acceptable Jewish person in media, you have to be essentially part of the normal culture, but with a little otherness sprinkled on top. And if you have any more than a little bit, you're crazy. And I know this because I was raised in a fairly conservative Jewish family. And I mean lower C conservative, as in conservative Judaism, not conservative Republican. And so I would say, "Oh, can we get a plain pizza?" And everyone would be like, "Why can't you just take the pepperoni off?" And I'm like, "It touched it." And they'd be like, "Weirdo." I've been told my whole life, even by people who really cared about me, that my beliefs are weird. And I've been told my whole life that things that I do are weird. Hell, I've been told my whole life things that I don't do are weird. People will be like, "Oh, do you practice this custom?" I'm like, "No." And they'll go, "Huh, weird." And I'll be like, "So why is this misrepresentation of an already underrepresented group bad?" Well, let me tell you something. Most people in the United States will never meet an Orthodox Jew. Even if they do, they will unlikely ever speak to them or get to know them. So when Netflix, one of the largest names in streaming, greenlights a show like this, they're beaming this representation of Orthodox Jews to Hank and Ashley in Iowa. Hank and Ashley might never have met a Jew, but now they think they know what Judaism is. They think they know that it's oppressive. Another issue with the way that Orthodox people are portrayed on television is that they're done wrong. It would be one thing if it was done correctly, but in a negative light. But a lot of the time it's just wrong. Like there's a Medium piece that just came out called "What is Fundamentalism and Why is it a Canard? Anti-Semitism is still anti-Semitism when proponents consider themselves enlightened." And this is a really great piece. Now I haven't watched the show, but this person has. So we're relying on them. They say that the star of this show said that she didn't have a radio in her home. That's not an Orthodox Jewish thing. I guess your parents just didn't like the radio. Every Orthodox Jewish family I've ever met has had an 8-seater van, and I promise those have radiators. Their kids have phones. They have Snapchat. They have normal stuff. They just turn off their phones and don't drive on Saturdays, bud. They're not an alien species. Orthodox people don't spin their clothes and drive Conestoga wagons. They're normal modern people. They are not the Amish. Orthodox people are not the Amish. I need a shirt that says that. There's also this fetishization of Orthodox people where people want to talk about their sex lives. When I was literally a child, people asked me when they found out I was Jewish, "Do Jews really have sex through a sheet?" I was literally like 11 years old when I was asked that. I barely knew what sex was. I had no fucking idea. There is also an inherent sexualization of Jewish women, and also of any woman who tries to maintain modesty. Look at the horrible things people say about Abby Shapiro, whom we do not stand, but is still a human being who shouldn't be sexualized against her will. I think there's been a lot of really great pushback from Orthodox women about how this show is portraying them. I also saw a couple pretty great tweets from people I follow I thought were relevant. No, I won't be watching the latest piece of content that fetishizes and others Orthodox Jews by exploiting a person working through personal and communal challenges. I'm tired of content packaged as critiques of Orthodox Judaism. I have my critiques. I also think not all entertainment should serve the agenda of reforming Orthodox communities. Orthodox Jews are humans, other observant Jews are humans, and I crave content that humanizes them. This is also a great one. No one is saying these stories cannot be told, but when it's the only story told, it creates a narrative. People never thought positively of religious Jews in general. Now we have to defend ourselves because this is the only media showing people about religious lifestyles. I also really recommend this Medium article about fundamentalism and Judaism because they are not the same. You should read it if you're interested in the show and you want to kind of understand how harmful it is on a more deep level than this kind of surface dive. Another reason that shows like this bother me is because it shows the Orthodox Jewish community as such like an insular, isolationist community when like Jews had to become that way in order to survive. Most places in the world where Jews were allowed to live, they were organized into ghettos, and this is long before the 20th century. And they were forced to create their own communities and kept from participating in commerce other than very specific roles, and essentially forced to keep their own council and be parts of insular, isolationist communities. It was not a choice that Jews made for themselves. It was a choice that was forced upon them. So I don't really think you can blame Orthodox people for keeping to themselves and creating their own insular communities, since that was a choice that was made for Jews without our consent for hundreds of years. Anyway, this has been my latest rant about Jews in media. I'm hopefully gonna do a couple little explainy videos. I also just really love talking about Jews in media because it kind of is the lens through which I've seen my life. I love television and I love books, and I have so rarely seen myself in them that, like, when I have, it's been a visceral experience. Like, I can count on one hand the number of books in which I felt truly represented and seen. People will often say, oh, this character is Jewish, when there's maybe 3 throwaway lines about it, and people will say, well, what do you want? You will have a character, you have representation. Are they representing me? It's like, yeah, I'm grateful, but it's not exactly a representation if I can't see anything of myself in a character. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Hey, come over here.